In this video, I'm going to talk about flat spins, spirals, and other acrobatic, aerobatic moves that involve the yaw axis heavily. I think these moves may be a little bit underrepresented in a lot of pilots' repertoire. Rolls and flips are really easy to think about, but yaw moves, unless you come from like a 3D helicopter background, you may not have that in your mind. So let's get into it. The first thing I want you to see here is I'm just going to do some slow yaw spins while using the throttle to maintain altitude. So I'm going to turn in a circle and just adjust my throttle to kind of hold my altitude constant. As I'm turning here, you can see that I'm sometimes flatter and sometimes I'm more rolled into the turn. And what's affecting that is the relative amount of roll that I have versus the relative amount of yaw that I have. So if I add more yaw without adding roll, then the copter will flatten out and yaw and spin faster. And if I add more roll without adding yaw, the copter will turn into the move, okay? So you can accomplish different speeds of yaw with various amounts of flatness versus turned into the turn. Now we're going to watch that same thing again, and what I want to point out to you this time is that I am actively adjusting my position relative to the rest of the field as I'm turning here. I'm not just turning and just drifting wherever. So as I find myself drifting somewhere I don't want to go, or if I have a direction I want to go, as I'm facing that direction, I may push slightly forwards, like right there. You saw the copter move forwards. Or I could also lean into or out of the move to move to the 3 o'clock or the 9 o'clock direction. That requires a certain type of spatial awareness. If you're not very familiar with the space, you might not feel comfortable moving sideways. But in a case like this, I'm very comfortable with the space, and so if I want to intentionally let the copter drift out of or into the turn, I can adjust where I want to go. In this section, I'm going to be doing a little bit of a faster yaw turn. So as you get more comfortable, start to push that yaw stick harder to the side and spin a little faster, all while maintaining control, all while maintaining the amount of flatness or turn into the move that you desire. And I also want you to notice as I do this move how I'm kind of subtly nudging the copter to keep myself basically in the same place. So you can do that. Just watch if you're starting to drift, and then when you're facing the direction you want to go, nudge a little bit forward, a little bit to the left, a little bit to the right to adjust your position as you go. As a demonstration of the ability to control the copter's position while you're doing these yaw moves, I'm now going to move the copter up and down the field, all while continuing to yaw. So you can see sometimes I'm a little more subtle and other times I'm a little more, less subtle and get a little more out of sorts, but you can see that it's very possible to maintain control while doing this. So the first thing I do is I let the copter drift out here, and again out. I'm not really pushing to the right so much as I am not pushing to the left quite as much, which lets the copter roll out of the turn. I'm under-coordinating the turn, if you will. And now I've gotten to the other end of the field while still rolling, or yawing. And I'm going to go back the other way. Sometimes I'm sort of moving forward, sometimes I'm moving forward more, sometimes I'm moving sideways more. There's various ways you can put it together. By this time, you should be comfortable with doing yaw spins in place and not crashing into anything. The next thing to do is to raise the throttle. And the faster you're yawing when you do this, the more awesome it will look. In that last one, you may have noticed that I entered it by doing a sharp coordinated turn, a normal turn, and then kind of transitioned to more of a yaw-y turn by adding a little bit of yaw and raising the throttle. You can do it either way. You can just mix it up, play with it. In this next one, I'm going to do another sort of pylon-style turn and then transition from there into this flattish spiral upwards. Now that's one of my favorite ways to exit one of these moves, is if you're yawing or turning to the right, to then roll to the left, the opposite direction, and roll out of it. I just really like something about the way you're sort of going one way and then whoosh, you're going the other way. Really, I just really love that way of getting out on the move. And you can play with that as well. Different ways to exit that spiral at the top, and then, interesting ways of getting back down again. Now I want to show you another way of playing with the yaw axis, and that is to do a sharp spin around a point on the ground. Let me just show you what that looks like. So here I establish the move right about here. I'm doing the spiral. I'm turned into the spiral a little bit. It's not completely flat. And then I raise the throttle, continuing to spin faster. I almost think this looks better than a flat spiral in some ways. Here's another example of the same thing. This time I roll into the move instead of out of it at the end, which gives a different feel. Now I'd like to just show you some examples of how you might incorporate some of this stuff into acro flying. That's going to do it for this session. I hope that it's inspired you to play more with your yaw axis. That doesn't sound right. Play more with the yaw axis. I think it's an underutilized axis for a lot of us. You may do like one little trick where you flip past with the yaw, or maybe do a yaw 360 pirouette. There's a lot you can do with the yaw axis and really play with these spins and spirals to really dress up the moves. The yaw axis is the place that a copter really can differentiate itself from something like a plane, which is always flying forward and can't really yaw in the same way. So you can really do some unexpected stuff. I hope this has all been interesting, educational, entertaining, and as always, happy flying.